All parties must improve humanitarian access to people in besieged areas. The situation in eastern Ghota is shocking. 160,000 people have gone without aid for more than a year. The United Nations is prepared to enter the area assistance, but we need the full cooperation of the Syrian government.
Ms. Amos and also other officials, UN officials, did not speak anything about Nubbul and the Zahra. Especially, these are the longest blockade. These two towns, which host about 70,000 people, is the longest blockade by the opposition forces since the conflict has begun. Also, in Yarmouk, 4 or 5 attempts to deliver aid was stopped by the opposition armed forces or sniped at and prevented in the last few days. More than 40 people died in the Yarmouk refugee camp of the Palestinians there. Also in Adr al-Ummaliya.
So what's the question, please, Nizar?
The question is here, if there's a need to name and shame, who is doing that? Why don't we hear one voice from the United Nations naming both sides, not just one side on this issue?
Nizar, that's just simply not the case. I just said earlier on, and you should read Ms. Amos's statement in full, that she held talks with members of the government and humanitarian partners about the plight of people in communities which have been blocked by government or opposition forces and who have not been reached with aid for months. She's provided quite a lot of detail. I would refer you to what she has said in her full statement, and I would also refer you to OCHA, to the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, for more details.
But most of the time it has been mentioned Muaddamiya as a major area which has been blocked. Of course, it has been blocked.
Nizar, your attempt to depict the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or indeed the United Nations in general, the siding with one side or the other, is not acceptable. The United Nations has played an impartial role in providing aid to everybody it can reach. The point is that on both sides, both government and opposition, there have been blockages and there have been difficulties with access. And Ms. Amos was there precisely to try to push through and to get assurances for access. And that is regardless of who is blockading whom. It's the plight of the individual civilians, wherever they are, that we should be concerned about, and not trying to point the finger at the United Nations for siding with one side or the other. That's just not acceptable, and it's not true.
All parties must improve humanitarian access to people in besieged areas. The situation in eastern Ghota is shocking. 160,000 people have gone without aid for more than a year. The United Nations is prepared to enter the area assistance, but we need the full cooperation of the Syrian government. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome the beginning of talks in Addis Ababa on the crisis